Who is that old geezer? Hi, all you nice people. Good morning. It's Barry Morse. Don't be alarmed. Jack is alive and well and right here. But I'm very happy to be visiting with him and with you in your lovely city. And I'm here to bring you news of a wonderfully exciting new venture which is coming to your province. A little later on, we'll meet his nibs, Jack.
Don't leave home without it. Don't leave home without him. Don't leave the program until you have seen Webster and Morse spar, the Shakespearean actor on one side and the professional boor on the other. And now back to Old Clothes and Porridge. Before we deal with artistic and cultural matters with which I don't normally touch, we're going to deal with quite a serious topic this morning because you may be one of the 2,000 or 3,000 marginal farmers in British Columbia who perhaps didn't appeal your removal from farmland assessment, or if you did, you lost it, and your taxes may have gone up with a wham. So with us this morning we've got Don Morton, the chairman of the BC Assessment Authority, and Ted Gwartney, his right-hand man. And also Tom Follett from Langley, Matsqui, and Abbotsford, who may be involved in this because of some interest in the Fraser Valley, as well as in Salmon Arm, Enderby, and elsewhere throughout the province. Barry Morse later. First, Tax Authority, Farmland Assessment, after the break.
Is there will it be in the future? Can you skip a year?
7.
There was a fair amount of panic in the streets among marginal farmers in British Columbia when it came up this year for the application of the standards by which you qualify for farmland taxation. And there were some somewhat hair-raising stories from the interior of British Columbia which, when checked out, didn't quite hold water. But to get it quite clear, I want to point out to you that in last year there were 54,600 parcels of farmland in British Columbia. That's a lot of farmland. This year there are 2,800 fewer parcels, so that means that 2,800 people have lost their advantageous farmland assessment. Don Morton is the commissioner, the chairman of the authority. Don, have you been tough on people? Have you been hard on people? Are there lots of little marginal farmers whom you've been squeezing into the ground saying, you're not a farm, you got to pay higher taxes?
No, I think in the main our assessors have not been tough at all, because the number that lost their farm assessment was considerably less than we had expected. Mm-hmm. I think generally speaking our assessors have been very lenient with the idea that if they've been too lenient, the people can catch up by next year anyway.
Mind you, there's been a claim that it has resulted in spectacular tax increase for some senior citizens. Have you come across any particular cases like that at all?
Personally, I don't know of one. There are many who expected it, and when it was fully explained to them, they found they were paying no more taxes than they were last year, because they already had a margin to work on, and because half of their school tax, if they're in ALR, was remitted already, which helped to balance it. In most cases, the senior citizens who are paying about $1 still only find they're paying a very small amount. Mm-hmm. And there's been very few appeals compared to the number we expected.
Yeah, my figures are right. Aren't they 54,600 parcels last year? Something like that?
I think that's correct, yes.
Let me turn to to Ted Gwartney, the Commissioner. Are all the courts of revisions over and are all appeals now finalised?
Yes, they are, Jack.
So now, will there be any change next year in your system, or will you go through the same assessment again in terms of whether marginal farms qualify on the basis of gross income?
Jack, I don't anticipate any changes. This is up to the legislature to determine.
but we think that the job has been done adequately and probably will continue.
You better explain, I happen to know myself because of a personal interest, but you better explain what constitutes farmland for the purpose of farm taxation. We're obviously not talking about big farms that run 100 head of cattle and take off 3,000 bales of alfalfa, are we?
Certainly a big farm would have no problem qualifying for farm classification and the special tax treatment. It's the smaller farms where it becomes an issue. And basically the standards are quite simple. There has to be $1,600 of gross sales from a parcel of land that's 10 acres or less. That's not net sales, but gross sales.
Income at the farm gate, as I
That's
believe
right.
you say.
Income at the farm gate.
And then what about beyond that?
Beyond that, it becomes a larger farm, and the income goes up in accordance with the value of the farm land. It's at 5% of the additional value of the farm land.
For farm use?
For farm use.
So you've got to have $1,600 income at the farm gate from whatever,
That's right.
plus the equivalent income of 5% of the balance of your land for the purpose of farming.
Farming, that's correct.
Farming. Now, there's one thing that I've been questioned about a number of times. Do your regulations mean that you can always skip a year, qualify one year, do nothing the next year, and requalify the next year on the previous year?
No, Jack. There's a provision that if you, because of some circumstance, have a poor year, you're still farming actively, but you have a poor year, that you can go back to a previous year, to 1 year previous. But if you stop farming altogether for a year, you would be declassified.
And then what happens when you're declassified, Don? I mean, what actually happens? Okay, I've appealed, supposing you've appealed your reclassification and you lose your appeal. You go from the very beneficial and generous farmland assessment to what?
It depends whether you're in ALR or not, but assuming that you're in the agricultural land reserve, you go back to the status of ordinary residential land, except that, of course, half your school taxes are still remitted. Right. If you're outside the ALR, then you become probably, depending on zoning, residential land, and you're taxed accordingly.
How much would your taxes increases on a rough guesstimate if you lose your farm classification?
Jack, this is on a province-wide average. It's about 5 times. That would be varied from one area to another.
Which areas have made the largest number of appeals in British Columbia, where you've had what you might call the biggest problems?
The Langley area, because of the large number of small farms in that area, have had the largest number. Second largest was in the Vernon Salmon Arm area, where there's a lot of farms also, smaller farms.
So you'd get most of your appeals would come from up there, not from Vancouver Island?
No, very few from Vancouver Island.
Now, supposing a guy has a piece of land which is not in the ALR,
yes,
not agricultural land reserve, but he's using it for farming purposes, right?
yes.
Can he qualify for taxation if he only leases the land out?
He can, if he leases the land to somebody, preferably with a properly registered lease, and can show that the required amount of agricultural products has been produced on that land. The land, after all, we're classifying land, not people.
I suppose so. But do you have different standards of income at the farm gate, and what constitutes a farm under local zoning, under, say, in the Fraser Valley compared to Vancouver Island, or the Fraser Valley compared to Enderby? Or are the standards that you set same throughout the entire province?
The standards are the same throughout the province, Jack, and we accept the receipts of the farmer. If he does not have receipts, then we have a schedule that we use as to what type of produce would bring. And this was produced in cooperation with the Ministry of Agriculture.
What's the minimum size to qualify for people? You know, everybody says, I've got to get a little piece of land in case the world caves in. I've got to have my fortress where I can hide. What's the minimum?
2 acres.
2 acres.
If you've less than 2 acres, you know.
You don't qualify.
It's possible, Jack, even with less than 2 acres, but then it becomes a matter of proving that this is your major livelihood, that you're developing a majority of your income from your farm land. But generally speaking, it's 2 acres. You still have to produce $1,600 on 2 acres.
Yeah.
Well, you could feed cattle.
You could.
Yeah.
You could feed cattle and make $1,600 easily enough in your 2 acres if you can afford to buy the hay.
That's right.
Now, I tell you what I'm going to do this one. Don, have you any, there are no major changes planned that you know of in your assessment authority in general or in your farmland classification schedules?
No, although we should remember that this is the farm year in the sense that it isn't only farm classifications. There was the reassessment of farmland, which hadn't been done till '79. And this is what caused a lot of the problem, is that people looked at their assessment notice and saw that their total valuation was $20,000, where it had been $2,000. But they didn't know at that time that only 10% of that $20,000 was the figure on which they were going to be taxed. So they screamed.
Is that going to rise on a graduated? Why are you only taxing them on 10% of the realistic assessment will save $20,000?
Because that's the figure the cabinet set, just like 15% is the amount on a residential property. And they set the farm amount at 10%. And in most cases, that has, well, a large majority of cases, that has worked out to what it was last year.
The valuation of farmland in British Columbia must have gone up tenfold on the books, at least.
The actual value, of course, Jack, was high, but the 10% happens to be the average assessment that happened to be on all the farms in British Columbia.
So at the moment, you're prescribed by law to charge 15% of the assessment on residential and 10% of the assessment on farmland for the purpose of taxation.
And 30% on industrial.
Yeah, well, we're not interested in
No, I
industry,
know,
we're
but
only, but you're
people
making a
forget
point.
that, I'm making a point that industry does carry a load.
You know what I'm going to do right now? I'm going to, any questions on farmland assessment right now? Will you take them? And we've also got Tom Follett here from Langley, Matsqui,
Sure.
Abbotsford.
Right.
If you want in with a question on your farmland assessment to praise the government or the commissioners, highly unlikely, or knock them, much better fun, after the break. Makes them work for the money over
Well,
there.
I think it makes it more interesting if you...
Yeah, sure.
Well, Jack, another thing we want to get in somewhere is this developing farm bit, too. Don't forget that.
What's it? Excuse me. Tom Follett is the Deputy Assessor for Langley, Matsqui, and Abbotsford, right? You'll get some questions.
No doubt.
A couple of points first, though, to Ted Gwartney. I gave a wrong figure on one of these things. What was it?
Well, on this year's assessment roll, residential property was reduced from 15% to 14.5%.
10, 14.5, and 30.
That's right, and
30
25
industrial.
on commercial. There's one more.
10,
Four numbers.
14.5, 25, and 30.
That's right.
Okay.
We've now confused everybody totally.
That's right.
10 is
14
farm, 14.5 is residential, 25 is commercial, and 30 is industrial.
That's right.
Perfectly simple, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
When I'm 65, can I still defer all or any of my taxes on farms or anything else if I so wish?
Anyone in British Columbia who is 65 years of age, widowed or handicapped, has an
65
option.
and widowed?
Or
Or widowed?
Or widowed, or handicapped.
Or handicapped.
Can defer all of their property taxes by simply making an application to their tax collector. And it's a very good deal right now because there's a very low interest rate, not a market interest rate, and the property values are increasing far higher than the interest that would be charged, so that it's quite an advantage for an elderly person in particular to defer and not pay property taxes.
Interest rate 8%?
Yes.
Compounded, put against your title,
Yes.
and when you eventually go to that great farmland in the sky,
Yes.
it's recovered from your estate.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Do many people take advantage of that?
Very few.
How few?
I don't know the number. You've got to remember, we're not really dealing with taxation. Ted brings this in because it's an important point, but it isn't a matter for the assessment authority really to deal with taxation.
But a 65-year-old who isn't filthy rich is silly if he doesn't take advantage of that particular provision.
He is. I think as this becomes more known and with higher inflation, more people will take advantage. We guess that right now maybe 2,000 to 3,000 is all that take advantage.
And there's thousands and thousands and thousands. Now, you wanted to make a point about developing farms.
Yes, there's another provision that where a person has a piece of land that he is planning on developing as a farm, that if he makes a capital investment, if he begins his work, and if he comes into the assessment office and presents a viable plan that shows us that over a period of time this will be a viable farm, it is possible for him to get the farm classification without meeting the full income requirements.
Providing down the road he carries out his plan to do this, that, such and so.
That's right. Before he can get it, he has to actually be in the process of developing the farm. He has to really be out there doing it, and he has to show that in a year's time or whatever that he'll actually have this in operation.
Let's go to the phones right now because we've got Barry Morse champing at the bit. Do actors champ at the bit? I suppose they do.
I don't think they do. They don't have bits, do they?
Go, bit parts. Go ahead from Salmon Arm.
Good morning. There's an old age pensioner here at Salmon Arm, and he has no power in his place, no hydro, and his taxes went from $1 to $2,900.
Well, Ted Gwartney will tell you that he's glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
Is that the one I checked out with you?
Yes, Jack Webster called me about this question, so I do have the information on it. The taxpayer's name is Henry Krebs.
Yes, I know him. I've known him ever since I was a kid.
Okay.
In reality, his taxes would have gone to roughly that amount, $2,900, if he was not going to be classified as a farm. However, Mr. Krebs does have sufficient income to qualify as a farm. The difficulty in his case, and in a few other cases that have been corrected now, was that the income was not reported. The assessor went out, met him on January 24th, got the income, got a new statement from him, and Mr. Krebs, the matter will go before the Court of Revision. Mr. Krebs should qualify for the farm classification this year. His taxes in 1979 were roughly $244. In 1980, because of the school tax exemption matter, they'll probably be about the same or even go down. If the mill rates are not increased, it would work out to $225. And his land is worth approximately $250,000.
His land is worth how much?
Approximately $250,000.
$250,000.
Yeah.
And he of
105
course, could also take advantage, if he so wished, with or without going through the Court of Revision, of deferring his taxes
Yes,
at
he can.
8%.
That's right.
Until such time as the estate paid the money back.
That's correct.
Does that make you happy, caller from Salmon Arm?
Yeah, and I sent you a bunch of stuff on that ICBC too.
No, just a minute, never mind ICBC. That was the story that drew my attention to this situation. And we checked it out previously, and it wasn't quite an accurate story. I think perhaps you would say, though, however, that if Mr. Krebs had been able to give you all the information quickly, or your people had sensed that the information was there to be got, that the story would never have happened if it happened at all.
That is correct, Jack. Obviously, when you're dealing with people, we put out information.
You don't quite know how the forms are going to be filled in by some people.
We actually did go back in November to try to get the further information, but were unsuccessful. And finally, it came to light in January, and the matter was dealt with within a week's time.
Well, that's good to have that corrected, and thanks for your call. ICBC another time. Avola, British Columbia. Go ahead, please.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
You may have answered my question while I've had the TV down. I'm not really sure.
Try it anyway.
I've got 100 acres of raw bush that's not in the freeze, and I want to know, I intend to turn 30 of it into farming of some kind, tree, either Christmas trees or whatever I can grow. I want to know what I can do with my taxes on a situation like that. I'll hang up so you can...
Okay, you hang up. We'll tell you.
The answer to that would be to go into the assessor's office, pick up the forms for a developing farm from him, talk to the assessor to find out what is required to be a developing farm, make the application, and then begin to proceed with your clearing of the land in accordance with your plan.
He'd come under the developing farm classification. But he'd have to clear the bush, plant his Christmas trees, or start his alfalfa crop, and he'd have to spend a lot of money to prepare the ground for that, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Tom Follett, just give me a word or two on the Fraser Valley. How many cases have you had in the Fraser Valley which have caused heartbreak, problems, or numbers?
Well, in our jurisdiction, we had approximately 87 cases, which actually surprised us due to the fact that we took off approximately 400 parcels off of farm.
You took 400 parcels off. So
approximately
that means
400.
400 parcels of land between 2 and 10 acres, which had previously had farm classification.
Yes.
In the ALR, some of them.
Most of them are in the ALR.
In the ALR.
Yes.
And if they weren't farming, they just came off.
Yes.
And you had 87 appeals.
Yes.
That was all. Do you know how they turned out?
By and large, there was additional information that came in after the closing of the roll and presented to the Court of Revision, and we put a few back on. There were
Yours
some
must
that
be the
didn't.
toughest place, because if you've got a small piece of land in the Fraser Valley, which is, say it's not an ALR, the Agricultural Land Reserve, when it comes out, what classification does it go to? Straight residential?
Yes.
That would put the taxes up, wouldn't it?
It would, however,
But it would put it up to normal taxation for those who never had the benefit of farm classification.
that's correct.
Sometimes one forgets that, Don, doesn't one?
See, what we had hoped for, or at one point, was a special Court of Revision made up of people knowledgeable about farms. But the big flood of farm appeals didn't come in. And somebody in their wisdom decided they really didn't need another Court of Revision traveling around the province. There were nothing like the number of farm appeals we had.
Okay, dokie, go ahead, please.
Yes, I have two questions. Is the minimum $1,600 income net income after outgo or gross?
Gross income, what you sell the product for.
Income at the farm gate.
Income at the farm gate. You could well have a negative net income and still qualify as long as you sell $1,600 worth.
Yeah. Did you use the figure 1,600?
Yes.
Caller?
Yes.
Yeah.
He did he? That's for your first 10 acres or less,
Yes.
One other question.
right?
What if two neighbors decided that they would sell each other their farm produce to the extent of $1,600 a year?
It would have to be its fair value. We would look at the schedules and determine what that produce was worth in accordance with the Agricultural Department standards.
Oh, surely in other circumstances too, it would have to be an arm's length
It would have to be
transaction.
an arm's length transaction also.
It would have to be a legitimate sale, or you could be in trouble with another department of another government in Ottawa.
Who's going to check on it? Let's see.
Oh, that's your problem, not mine. I think we'll leave that one where it lies and take another segment of calls with Don Morton, Chairman of the Authority, Ted Gwartney, the Commissioner, right?
Yes.
And Tom Follett, who is the Deputy Assessor in Langley, etc. After the break. This is a very special program this morning. Don't forget that Barry Morse will be here shortly. People will be turning off in droves if they're not interested in farmland assessment. A point, though, that I think I picked the last guy up wrong. If he has $1,600 of farm income, of farm produce, that's no good to him unless he sells it, is it?
That's correct. He can't just use it himself.
No, it's got to be sold.
He can't just trade with a neighbor. But providing he sells $1,600 worth of farm produce which he has produced, our responsibility is covered, really.
That
land is producing $1,600 worth of farm.
The object of the exercise being?
That farmland should be taxed less if it is producing something. Mm-hmm. That's the object of the
And
exercise.
we're using the $1,600 on the 10 acres.
On a very low standard, really.
10 acres down to what? 2 acres. Tom, have you actually got easier standards than this in this classification than the municipalities had before the standardization?
I feel that the standards now are far easier to administer than what they were under the old systems. And the old systems were varying from one area to the other, and now we have a standard for the province.
And in the old system in the Fraser Valley, you had to have 5 acres to have any kind of a farm operation at all.
Under the old system, 5 acres and over, you could qualify on a similar basis, but under 5 acres, you had to make the greater part of your total income from the farm.
And now you can qualify from 2 acres up if you have the income.
Yes.
Good. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
Greetings from the sunny Cooties. Jack, I have a piece of land, namely 4 acres. It's zoned commercial. I'm taxed commercial, and yet it's under the ALR. I can't do anything about it from a resale avenue because of the ALR, but I'm taxed accordingly. Now, where's the line drawn on one side, or what side should it be drawn on?
There's one for you, gentlemen.
Land which is within the agricultural land reserve but is zoned for a higher use is not going to qualify if it's...
Oh, no, I think he's asking you a general question. Why in the land reserve does he zoned and taxed commercial? Is that your question?
That's right.
That's correct. He should be out. If the land is zoned commercial correctly, he should get it out of the agricultural land reserve, because obviously it's not agricultural land, or it's not going to be used for that purpose. If it remains in the agricultural land reserve, he does not get, of course, the advantage of Bill 13 of half his school tax off, and he cannot do that. If it applied to commercial land, there would be sawmills in agricultural land reserve getting 50% of their school tax.
Have you tried to get your land out of the ALR?
Well, under the circumstances, the program presents itself for questions in this regard. I haven't tried to get it out of the ALR. I'm leaving it temporarily at the position. I get no benefit from being in the ALR. It ties me to it. But
It does seem an anachronism.
Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
Have you tried
It's
to
over
get?
here.
Oh, have you tried to get it rezoned?
not necessarily, no. No, I haven't tried to get it rezoned.
You see, you're in the position of not wanting to get it rezoned because you might want to use it for commercial purposes. And therefore, you're in the class of person who is not given any tax advantage because you would be in the position of being a speculator holding a piece of land that you might want to use commercially. It may be accidental that you're in that position.
Actually, the whole area in which this piece of land is situated is all zoned under the ALR. And under the circumstances of the same thing, it's not agricultural land. It's not agricultural because of the industrial development around it. It sits in the middle of a complex of industrial...
How do you get the... You're paying commercial level taxes now.
That's right.
Seems crazy.
Yes, well, it's part of the whole picture that ALR was brought in with a big sweep. And obviously there are pockets here and there that shouldn't have been.
Its first step is to go to the what do you call it, Land Commission.
Either to get it out of the ALR or to get it rezoned.
Okay, boy, go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I'm on a 5-year plan on farm tax. My place was run down. My question is, I've spent so much money building up my place to get myself in a situation where I can farm it properly. I have to reseed and everything. I was wondering if there is a chance, do I have to make $1,600 every year on the 5-year plan? Or can I sit back and build up my place and put my money into it?
You have not applied yet, I trust, from your question?
I have been granted...
you have been granted.
I have been granted assessment.
Your plan should detail what is required each year from you, and I think that if there's any specific questions, you should discuss it with a local assessor and find out exactly what is required. There has to be, for a 5-year plan, there would normally be trees planted that take 5 years to mature, something of this type.
I'm strictly building barns, refencing, and reseeding my ground because my ground hasn't been turned over for 35 years.
What area?
I'm in Mission and Haney area. I'm right across from the BC Farm, Maple.
Yeah.
And do you anticipate some income each year from the land?
I'm trying to. Last year I made my quota. And this year, to make my quota, I would have to buy 20 calves and sell them and hope to make $1,600. In the meantime, I spent $10,000 trying to build up my...
No more detail. Surely this is a matter where his development plan can be rechecked by the local assessor. That's not you, Tom, is it?
No, that's on the other side of the Fraser River.
The other side of the Fraser River. Well, you got the plan, go back and nag them, right?
That's right.
He's probably all right.
Yeah, probably all cheerful words anyway.
Yeah.
Jack, can I mention one positive thing?
Yes, please.
That is that you started the show off by saying that 2,000 to 3,000 parcels have been declassified. And I wanted to clarify that more than that have been added on as new farms during this same period. We actually will have more farms that have qualified for farmland classification as a result of the new standards and as a result of the
Good point.
The developing farm policy.
Understand the intent of this program is not to make people happy.
Yes.
It's to make them worry.
Yeah, but our intent is to make them
Your
happy.
intent is to make them happy. Go ahead, please. No, I get the point. It's very valid.
On this farm classification, if you purchase...
Go on.
If you purchase cattle in the spring and sell them in the fall, and the selling price, do you have to deduct your purchase price
Yes.
in order to qualify for a farm tax?
Yes.
You can only claim the net gain on the animal's back, belly, thighs, and side. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Etc.
Etc.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's right.
From Salt Spring, go ahead, please.
Yes. If you are elderly and in your declining years, you're still forced to produce this, show this amount of money, and the only break then you have is to defer your taxes.
Well, if you stop farming, you can defer your taxes regardless, farming or not, can't you?
Farming or not, but what most of the elderly are doing is they are leasing their land out to someone who is simply cutting off forage. And simply cutting off forage will, in the case of a parcel of land that's 10 acres, meet the minimum income requirement. So we really have not declassified many elderly people, only a couple.
In other words, if I don't want to do it, I can get Ted to come up and harvest my hay and sell it to him, and I'll easily make 1,600 acres at the price of hay now.
That's correct.
$1,600.
Or you can get him to harvest and sell it yourself.
Well, that's all very well, but if you don't want to do that and you're forced to produce this amount of money, you're not, unless you sell the stuff, you're not credited with...
That's correct. You've got to have the income.
That's right. Of really the thousands of people in this position, there's only been a couple who have not leased out their land or made an effort. And they did it by their own choice.
And as you pointed out in the case from the interior, the Krebs case, the land itself is probably worth on the market $250,000.
As farmland.
As
It
farmland.
would be worth a great deal more if it was for some other
Development land,
purpose.
for development.
Oh, yes.
Gentlemen, thank you, ma'am. Gentlemen, I think you've covered the situation very well. At least you've put some information in my mind, and I can relay it back to people. My thanks to Don Morton, the Assessment Commissioner. My thanks to Ted, the Chairman of the Authority, Ted Gwartney, the Commissioner, and Tom Follett from the Fraser Valley.
Could we ask you a question? Did you get farm classification?
I certainly did. And my books are open to inspection, and valid receipts are there, and I more than qualify for my farmland taxation for farm use, and I am not in the ALR, and I'm not subdividing, and I'm not developing. I am the most honest person in the whole wide world.
And you're not over 65?
Not quite, but I lie a lot. After the break, Barry Morse. Do you mind if I upstage you?
Yeah, as if you didn't always. What do you say?
A man of your advancing age and distinguished
Listen, do you know how old he is?
a
You know how old he
delightful
really is.
actor,
Can't talk me down. I know how old you are.
absolutely delightful actor. As I left the house this morning, my ever-beloved wife said to me, "You've got Barry Morse on there this morning." I said, "Yes." She said, "If you attempt to get a bit part in one of his Hollywood productions or whatnot," she said, "I shall leave you forthwith." Because she knows I'm the biggest ham in the world, and I'm terribly jealous that I've never been discovered by Hollywood.
You've just given me an idea this very second.
What is the idea?
You'd be a great Henry VIII. Yes? You got the figure, you got the appetite, just a bit of a beard, and a lot of chicken legs, and you'd be home free.
And I look like Charles Lawton to
Sure,
boot.
that's right. Bit more talent, but never mind.
You mean Lawton has? Now, Barry,
Yes,
the
sir.
Lord, we shouldn't be talking about this. I want to talk about other things.
Well, we're talking about everything.
American Express,
Yeah.
The Fugitive, Space 1999. You're in
Oh, don't go too far back, Jack. Now, come on.
I thought that was just recent.
Oh, that was just the other day.
However, you're here to make a pitch, and I understand that you were recognized in the legislature yesterday, and that you and your associates have walked away with all kinds of grants and whatnot, and that you have taken an appointment, which is really a surprising development for a man of
Well, it is.
so many international commitments.
Bless you. That's kind of you to say, but it's an amazing thing that I have only been back in the province again, your province that is, for 3 days. I came originally at the invitation of this organization, the Lord Chamberlain's Players, to give advice about their upcoming venture, which is nothing more nor less than to build a new theatre here in your province, over in the capital, in Victoria, which is to be a facsimile, replica of Shakespeare's own theatre, the Globe. And having spent about 2 hours there listening to this extraordinary venture, I found myself spiritually handcuffed to the whole thing. And I said, well, listen, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, would you ever take it all over? And just with a hug and a handshake, we've done nothing more than that, I'm committed. So I'm going to be spending ever more and more time here over on the island, of course, more than anywhere else, doing this extraordinary thing.
You can always look up Howie Meeker. He lives on the island,
Is that right?
too.
Oh, good.
Golly,
I will.
gee whiz, he will be
I will.
excited, too. But quite seriously, this is going to be Shakespeare's... Can we turn around and
There
show
it is. There's an overall picture, but what is much more graphic, because it shows the structure in the location, is our scale model here, which many of you will recognize, is Shakespeare's own theatre, the Great Globe itself, as it's called. And there, if I remove the walls by the magic of my fingers and a bit of Velcro, you will see what it looks like inside. I'll get back to describing it all in more detail later on.
Well, that's quite a good shot. Let's see that again.
There it is. There's the
Close up
the
again.
loose
yeah.
one. There you see the stage inside. I've just removed a wall for demonstration purposes. There's the stage. See how big my finger is? And there you can just see the design of the galleries all around, which the audience will sit in. And in the front there is the yard, the courtyard, where the groundlings used to sit or stand. And usually the groundlings down there were pelted by the upper classes sitting upstairs with orange peel, but we won't allow that. But if you can loosen the shot again a little bit, I'll show you where it lies in relation to the whole site, which has just now, only yesterday, been granted us. It is along, for those of you who know the area, alongside the Patricia Bay Highway in the municipality of Saanich, who've been marvelous allies to us. They're all tremendously excited about this. And it lies on the old Maltwood property. There, if you can just come up a little bit further, where that old house is the old Maltwood house, which is going to be turned into a restaurant. And further down here, in front of the whole property, there will be a Tudor village with all kinds of places to shop, to eat, to drink mead and ale and all those nourishing things.
Mulled wine.
Mulled wine and all of that. And most important of all, there will be presented every year, starting next year, a festival of the plays of Shakespeare in his own theatre. It's a most extraordinary achievement for your province and for the municipality of Saanich and for your beautiful capital city, because it is unique not only in the world, but in all time. This building, or anything like it, has never existed since Shakespeare's own day, when, after an all too brief life, it was burned down. Needless to say, our plans call for much more durable materials, and we shan't be scorching anybody's britches.
How many people will get into this rebuilding of Shakespeare's original Globe Playhouse?
It will be somewhat fewer. I can't tell you precise figures. It will be somewhat fewer than the original Globe Playhouse, because, as you know, I'm sure, the original Globe Playhouse required people to stand a lot of the time, and we don't intend to do that. Also, of course, nowadays we're used to rather more comfortable seating, and so the number will be fewer. The actual Globe, you know, held nearly 2,000 people, it is reckoned. But we shall have fewer than that. But what the great advantage is, the plays will be produced and played in exactly the same manner as they were in Shakespeare's own lifetime.
Barry, weren't you involved in the establishment of one of the other festivals in Canada? Was that the Shaw Festival?
Yes, I had a bit of a hand in the launching of the Shaw Festival, and that was such an extraordinary, exciting adventure that, as my wife says, I have become a sucker for causes.
So you think this could be as great as the Shaw Festival? Or?
As great or greater, because it is unique, as I say, in the world, and unique in the whole of history. And by presenting Shakespeare's own plays in Shakespeare's own theatre in the way that they were intended to be produced, we will, I expect, draw audiences from all over the world in the fullness of time.
Well, we're going to meet some of the people from the Lord Chamberlain Society and ask them a few questions about money.
There's always that.
But basically, it's going to be a commercial proposition.
Oh, indeed. The great thing, the first step that's already been taken that led to this extraordinary scene in the legislature only yesterday was that we went over to the legislature to meet Hugh Curtis, the Minister of Finance, and Brian Smith, the Minister of Education. And they became so excited, it was electrifying, it really was. They became so excited that Brian said, I'm going to go down to the chamber, you go into the balcony, I'll stop the debate and make the announcement that this venture has been launched so that it'll go into Hansard. It'll be a matter of recording for history. So I went into the balcony, Brian went down on the floor, got the speaker's eye, and said, there is about to be launched in our province, in our city, the most exciting theatrical venture of a decade. And it's right here in our capital. And in our gallery, I would like to introduce, Mr. Speaker, our guest, and he said a few nice flattering things, which I've forgotten for the moment. No, I've written them all down. But he said, and there's the old guy himself, Barry Morse, and you never heard such desk thumping in that chamber in your life.
Are you telling me, Barry Morse, that there was unanimity in the legislature of British Columbia yesterday?
Both sides at once. Bang, 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 bang. It was just electrifying.
That is probably the first time in the past 20 years.
I can believe it. But this is the kind of thing that everybody likes.
Oh, by the way, just a personal question.
Yes, sir.
What are you doing this week?
Next week, I'm going to be back over in London, England.
Oh, pity.
Working for Auntie Beebe.
Pity. It's the first time I've felt really superfluous in this program, and I plan to go golfing and ask you to take the whole damn thing over.
Anytime.
After the break. Normally, take them later on, or I might have been stuck with them for longer. I've got, no, I really should have done you off the top this morning. Barry, who are your henchmen present in this studio on this project?
You're still here. I thought I was running it from here on. Well, let me tell you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce, ladies first, our Associate Project Director, Miss Tony Blodgett, and our Project Director, Mr. Brian Lightburn, I beg your pardon. The light burns very brightly right now around these parts.
Well, so we get down to cases, I'll ask the questions.
Right, sure.
What's the financing for this? When did you start that? Why did you start that? How much public money do you want?
We don't have a fixed figure at this particular time, Jack, as to what we are looking for. For a number of reasons. The working drawings are being worked on, and with Barry's involvement, there is a number of changes being made to the original plans.
Quite frankly, Jack, I beg your pardon, Brian, forgive me interrupting, I do it all the time.
It's impossible. You carry on.
Quite frankly, it amounts to this. The venture, as of yesterday and the day before, has become on a much, we hope, a much grander scale, never mind large, but on a much higher quality scale than perhaps had been originally visualized. And we want to level with people. We don't want to give you a lot of bogus figures this week and have to retract them next week.
Right.
I'd sooner be right next month than wrong today.
Whose concept was it initially?
A group of local people in Victoria who formed a board and then invited Brian and Tony to join them. Brian, in his turn, had worked with me in a telethon over in Cal. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't get over to your telethon
just the other week.
Yeah, I always loved being with you. But Brian had worked with me on a telethon over in Calgary, and one fine day I'm sitting at home minding my own business, and Brian is on the phone saying, I'm in Victoria, BC, and we'd like you to come and advise about this project which a local board has brought forward about rebuilding Shakespeare Theatre. I arrived on Monday. I sort of hugged everybody and climbed aboard on Tuesday. Yesterday we were in the legislature and found that the land was ours. And so you won't be surprised that we haven't got precise figures on finance.
But you've got the land now, for sure.
We have the land.
That's a grant to you.
That it is approved in principle by Saanich Municipal Council. They had to wait for the transfer, the ordering council from the provincial government to transfer it from the university to the municipality. Now we have to get one more final approval from the council, but it is approved in theory.
I might get killed for this question. Do you have a live theatrical group in Victoria right now? Or will you have to bring in, well, you bring in your big names, but you have to bring in your acting?
Somebody asked me at our press conference the other day, which was an exciting event, which I must talk to you about in a minute. The Lieutenant Governor was there and all kinds of pleasant people. Pat Jordan, your Minister of Tourism, was there. But somebody asked, who will compose your company? And I said, not altogether in jest, human beings, maybe a couple of dogs. But I pointed out that we wouldn't be so slavishly authentic as to, for example, as they did in Shakespeare's day, as you know, employ small boys to play the girls' parts. Because I said, although I'm sure we could find a few young fellows who wouldn't mind dressing up in ladies' clothes, to me that kind of thing is a drag. And so we are not going to be, in other words, slavishly authentic. The quality, this is the essential and important and serious thing, all joking aside. The important thing, which I've stressed right from the word go, is that naturally I don't want to be involved in anything which is not what I call first division. You know, it's going to be Glasgow Celtic and the Rangers, or Liverpool, or you know, one of those top first division outfits.
Yeah, well, don't mention the Canucks.
Yeah, well, we won't go into that. We won't get into that. But in other words, it's an essential of our operation that we shall have something much better, as well as stars. We shall have bloody good actors.
When do you think you'll get off the ground? When do you think they'll start by?
I think
Brian.
all our anticipations are that we will be open sometime in 1981, Jack. That's certainly what we're aiming for, and every indication points in that direction.
You must feel sorry that David MacDonald, the Tory Minister of Culture, was defeated, because he was out here handing out money like there was no tomorrow.
I realize that, and although
I don't know. Who's got culture now in the new thing? Francis Fox.
Francis Fox is the Secretary of State.
Yeah,
Secretary of State, which would have that jurisdiction.
He has that.
Yeah, yeah.
But although we did lose Mr. MacDonald, we do have Ray Perot, who is obviously casting eyes in this direction with aspirations of
because of the
dispersing
alienation
money.
of the West, you'll get very generous treatment, I'm sure.
We certainly
of
hope
course,
so.
Because, for the first and foremost prime reason, that this is an enormously commercial venture. People so often forget, when they're talking about Shakespeare and culture and all that kind of thing, that it is, plain and simply, from the lowest commercial point of view, big bucks. Willie Shakers, as we always call him in our trade, is the biggest box office name in the whole history of showbiz. You play this game, as I do very often in Hollywood, with those, you know, fellas who wear the tight silk suits and the frightened faces. They know the price of everything and the value of nothing. And you say to them, what's the biggest name in the whole of box office history? And they'll say, well, how about Chaplin? No, much bigger than that. MGM, maybe the whole... No, much bigger than that. And then they go on for a quarter of an hour. You let them stew. And then you finally say, did you ever hear of William Shakespeare? They all fall very quiet, because it's true. More money has gone into more box offices over a longer span of time for William Shakespeare than any other single individual or corporation in the whole history of time.
I can believe it.
So that when we talk about money, we want to stress not only the money that it will take to launch the thing, but looking down the road, the vast sums of money that it will attract, not only directly, but in ancillary services and trades of every kind.
I must say I'm very impressed. I never heard or saw anything about it at all until you phoned me last week.
Well, in an area, if I can just pick up, Jack, that Barry was talking about, the marketing people we have talked to so far have indicated a tremendous interest from tourism and prestat tours that certainly is going to benefit the province as a whole. It's a very, very exciting venture and beneficial to everybody.
Well, all you've got to do now, you've got the grant of the land well underway. All you've got to do now is raise the money, design it, working plans, build it, and open it for 1981. Is it possible?
Oh, sure. In fact, it's not only possible, but the very fact that it is excitingly short, in a paradoxical way, I always think makes it more possible. Because we can all do something. If somebody says we've got to do it next week, but if somebody says to us, well, take your time, and when you're ready, then you never do it, do you?
It's like the book I'm going to write.
That's right.
It'll never get written.
Me too. My wife is always trying, what about that or that project that you said you'd do someday?
You'll be in real trouble. It was your wife's birthday when? Yesterday?
My wife's birthday yesterday.
And have you taken this job as artistic director without consulting her?
Well,
is there no equality in your family whatsoever?
She knows of old, because we've been married the same length of time as you. It's our 41st anniversary coming up. It's yours too, isn't it?
Yeah, Richard, stop.
Yeah, 40 years. 40. Did you buy the rubies last year? It was a ruby wedding last year. You didn't get the ruby with Jack. No. Hey, there's something wrong here. I told her.
Don't be funny.
This is where it's the rubies. The ruby wedding, 40th. Okay.
Anyway, it was your wife's birthday yesterday, and you took this job without her advice or consent.
Yeah, because she's playing in a play in England. And so I did send her a cable. I said, well, nice things. And then I said, don't expect to see me too much for the next year or so, because I've taken up a cause. And she knows what that means. She knows that, she's going to have to just put up a little plaque where I used to be. My son did a marvelous thing. The last time I was mixed up in a cause, you reminded me of the Old Shore Festival. It was coming up to the time when it was our silver wedding, and I wasn't there. And so my son, who's always been a bit of a wag, he went out and bought one of those cards that you send in sympathy to people when they're bereaved. Purple Gothic lettering. And he sent it to his mother for her silver wedding. It said on it, he is just away. Isn't that terrible?
Very good. A man who's 21 going on 62. Barry Morse, after the break. Serious topic, and another question from my wife.
Yes, sir.
Whatever happened to David Jansen, with whom you played for so many years as Inspector Gerard in The Fugitive?
Oh, yes. That was sad, was it?
Good friend of yours.
Oh, yeah.
But we've just...
It's not very often that you can say seriously that somebody's death is a shock. Mm-hmm. But David, who was only 48 after all, you know, at the peak of his career, is working in a new television film. I had talked to him on the phone the day before, because I was in New York, he was in LA. And the following morning, a reporter called me from Hollywood and said, I wanted to get a statement from you about the news. I thought, well, I don't know anything about Afghanistan. What does he want? And the guy said, you haven't heard? David Jansen is dead.
Yeah,
he had a massive heart attack out of a clear blue sky with no warning. And with a guy, as I say, at the peak of his career like that, you've got to say it's a shock.
And in reasonably good trim.
He'd never shown any sign of physical weakness before.
Listen, I felt that, you know how people become personally identified with television stars.
Sure, yeah.
Like Jansen and like yourself, for that particular matter. But, you know, I think the thing I like doing best of all, because I'm a bit of a television freak, was Space 1999.
Did you really?
I like all these space things.
Are you a science fiction
Star Trek.
freak?
No, it's great stuff to watch on television because you know there's going to be a happy ending, and there's absolutely no strain sweat, no abortion, rape, murder, drugs, or any of that garbage.
That's part of the attraction, because it's in another
escape.
world.
Yes, sir. It's escape.
And I enjoyed being kind of everybody's space uncle, is what I was on that series. The old guy I played was called Professor Bergman, and he was supposed to be sort of father figure to everybody, but he was also supposed to know all about the scientific complications, and I never could figure all that out.
One thing I like about you, Barry, you know, yes, I think I like.
Is there one?
Yes, there is, and it is the fact that you don't put on airs and graces as an actor. Are you a professional you are a professional who will tackle any job, almost of any kind, without wondering about your own image?
That's right. I always say to young actors, and as you know, both of my youngsters are young actors, although my daughter's been busy in other kinds of production lately. She's got 2 little girls. But I always say to young actors, the best thing for an actor to be doing is acting. And that is really saying the same kind of thing as the late Lord Rothschild used to say about finance. Nobody ever went broke taking a profit. And so if you keep your hand in by whatever you do, you are going to get better. And if you're worrying too much about your image, what you'll finish up with is an image and no talent, which is like a lot of people in our trade I won't mention. Isn't that true?
Listen, you were very big on the CBC in the early days.
Oh, people used to call me the test pattern. Isn't that right? So the boys remember that. Some of the boys.
You've done it all. What was that British detective thing you were on radio 1,000 years ago?
This villain reminded me of that.
Freddie Hatt reminded you of it. What was that one?
This morning, but he must have been in knee pants. I created a famous radio series character long before television was ever thought of, called Paul Temple, which a famous BBC announcer, you know, they're all very posh in those days, wearing evening dress. And boiled shirt, really, evening dress.
In the studio?
Yeah.
A radio studio?
That's right, true, they did. They used to wear evening dress anytime after 6 o'clock in the evening. And one of our earlier episodes, the fellow comes on, and one of those real kind of cut glass accents, you know, if he was any more British, he wouldn't be able to talk at all. He's making the announcement, and he said, seriously, just like this, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the BBC Home Service. Tonight, we bring you episode number 9, in the adventures of Tall Pimple." Really, that's like that. And it became enormously popular, and I still get mail from now middle-aged ladies who tell me that they were allowed to stay up that late in those days.
Oh dear,
Very satisfying.
What was your first big television thing?
Well, I was
American.
I started to guest on all kinds of series, particularly a series that was run by our old boss who created The Fugitive, called The Untouchables. You remember The Untouchables?
Do we ever?
And I always was creeping around being 87 other characters with wigs and whiskers and nose paste. I used to play Romanian drug smugglers and French champagne peddlers and sex perverts leaping out of bushes and any kind of trash you can think of. And old Quinn, it was because of that, really, Quinn Martin, our boss, got so fascinated with me playing all these different characters that he conceived the idea of me playing this detective in The Fugitive. I thought he was kidding at first. I said, "Quinn, you don't want me to play that. I'm a British actor. You've got all kinds of guys in Hollywood do that kind of thing very well." He said, "I don't want it done well. I want you to do it." No, that's not what he said, really. He wanted something a bit different, and sure enough, he got it.
You know, that was the kind of series that people used to rush home to watch, The Fugitive.
Oh, yes.
When was Gerard going to catch him? Did Gerard ever catch him? Yes.
We finished up great friends, and we all lived happily ever after.
No, in the series.
No, we did. What happened
Somebody was killed at the end.
The one-armed man who it turned
Who
out
did
was
the
the
killing.
actual murderer. David and I joined forces, and I'll tell you a funny thing about that. We got a minute? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's so nice to remember dear old David's great sense of humor. For all that kind of dark brown St. James's Infirmary voice, you know. He was a very, very witty fella. And they wrote for the last episode of The Fugitive a very sentimental and mawkish kind of reunion between him and me. So we were a bit embarrassed by this, and we were talking about it. And David said, look, I tell you what, let's do. For the first take of this scene, we'll whisper, whisper, whisper. So we come to take one of this scene where we're supposed to be saying, I think you're a real good guy, and I'm sorry I was a mistake. Well, I think you're a good guy too, and all that stuff. And we played all this rather, shall we say, blancmange kind of dialogue. And at the end of it all, we fell into each other's arms and kissed each other full on the lips. Well, that put an end to that. It never got on the air.
David.
Dear old David, he's a great guy.
More with Morse, da. And you can talk to him too, if you can get a word in edgeways. After the break. As I said earlier this morning, don't leave home without calling Barry. How long have you been doing American Express?
It's 4 years, I think, now. It's the 4th year. Yes, that's right. We're just going to do another new batch for the upcoming year shortly because, of course, the ground rules about travelers' checks change every once in a while, and there are more and more people in the field.
I must say you're better looking than the other guy who does it with the big...
Carl?
Carl
No,
Malden.
he's very...
Oh, he's one of the ugliest men on
distinguished
television.
fella. He's got a mouth a bit like a road incident, but no, sorry, Carl, it's all right. No, he's a great guy. And a very
Prove
good
a story about Budge Bell Evering, the
yes.
Lieutenant Governor.
Your Lieutenant Governor, just 2 days ago, we had a press conference in Victoria, to which were invited all the worthies of your province, including, of course, the Lieutenant Governor, Henry Bell Irving, familiarly known to you all and lovingly, I'm sure, as Budge, whom I'd never met before. Anyway, I am doing my pitch.
You would have been a great politician.
Oh,
you
listen,
really would have been a
don't
great
get me into that. I'm in enough trouble already.
Right. Go on. Anyway, Budge is there.
Budge is there, along with all the other worthies, and we're doing our pitch like I'm doing now, and I'm talking my head off, and nobody's getting a word in edgeways. But Budge, who had been greeted at the beginning of the press reception, they were all so thrilled, this was what was so exciting, that Budge moved up alongside Brian, who was standing beside me on the
Education
platform,
Minister.
And tugged him by the sleeve and said, look, I want to say something. And they said, well, yeah, sure, all right, Your Honor, yes, say something. And he made a most delightful speech, jumping up and down on his heels like a schoolboy. And when he got through afterwards, he said, damn it, he said, I missed a great chance there. He said, there's a line in Shakespeare that says, and gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here. And I didn't say it. I said, never mind, I'll say it the next time. So now I've said it.
That's
okay,
rather
Budge.
good. Gentlemen in England now abed.
And they would be about now, wouldn't they?
Finish it.
Will think themselves accursed they were not here.
You are. You've played a lot of Shakespeare.
Well, over the
have
years.
you?
Oh, yes,
Over the years.
indeed. Oh, yes. My first part
What's your favourite part in Shakespeare?
I tell you.
There isn't even an actor fee in this, but there's your camera.
My favourite part in Shakespeare, I always say, whenever anybody asks me what my favourite part is, I always say the next one. But I just hope that the next one will be something of Shakespeare, because here in your province and in your capital city of Victoria, we're going to be doing a lot of Shakespeare. But I'll do you a bit. Just remember.
Yes.
Because the name of our theatre is called The Globe. And Shakespeare, in what is thought to be the last play that he ever wrote, actually uses the name of the theatre in a kind of a pun joke. It's not a joke, it's a rather solemn speech. But I think Shakespeare by this time was thinking that it was about time he packed it in and was about to retire. And so what is thought to be the last play he wrote is called The Tempest. And towards the end of the play, the leading character, named Prospero, says, I hope I remember it all, he says, be cheerful, sirs. Our revels now are ended. These, our actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself. Yea, all which it inherit shall dissolve, and like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. Isn't that wonderful stuff?
Applause, applause.
Well, we're going to make a few dreams in Victoria next year. And so we hope that we may do proud by old William.
I can't quote Shakespeare to you.
Sure you can.
But I can quote Robbie Burns.
That's just as good.
I'm not going to be upstaged by this.
Go on, he's going to do a turn. Go on.
No, if I did a turn, I'd have to go into orbit. And generally, if I'm doing a turn, I may have had a dram and I'll sing a song. But
jolly good.
No drams and no songs.
You should always have a dram before you
I merely want to say to you with some fair sincerity, a touch of admiration, which I find difficult to produce on television, because I'm a professional bitcher, is, oh, would some power the gift he gives to see ourselves as others see us. You want to talk to Barry?
Profound
oh, no applause for that. No applause. No applause.
Profound
no
and
applause.
true.
No, absolutely no applause.
What's the other bit of that? There we go, topping again. No, the other bit of that same piece, Jack, it goes something about the rank. Oh, it's talking about rank and class and all of that. The rank is but the Guinea
stamp. A man's a man for all that.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Can't do the accent as well as you do.
No, you can't. You can do all kinds of American and foreign accents, but you cannot. No English-born person.
Oh, sure I can.
No, you can't.
I can remember. Can I tell you a story about a Glasgow girl? Is it all right to mention?
Is it clean?
No, not terribly, but
okay,
it's a bit. Yeah. There's a guy who's an old mate of mine who is an elderly theatrical producer, and he's coming out of Saanich station by the railway there. One day, quite late at night, and he sees, he was a Scot himself, and he was from Edinburgh, you see. He was a very genteel and proper Edinburgher, you see. And he was coming out of the station, and he sees, standing alongside the railway station, this rather pretty, but obviously very young-looking girl, all by herself.
This is not a Billy Connolly story, is it?
I don't know.
No, carry on.
So
where's the kill button?
He goes up to this girl, and he says, "My dear, are you lost? Do you not know your way home? Can I help you?" And she says, "Away, you silly old... I'm a wee whore."
Are you lost? Can I help you? Oh, yes, I get the joke.
Is it a Billy Connolly story?
No, his is worse.
All right. Well, I wouldn't have cracked that on you.
Linda, do you think I could tell the wake story?
No, she says. No, she says, very firmly.
Family story.
Yes, right.
True story.
Okay. Okay.
It's one generation before my father. One of the Websters died. And the practice was always to have a wake in the kitchen, and the body lay in the coffin in the front room, bend the room. So the wake started a wee bit early, and the undertaker's men were a wee bit late coming up the spiral stair with the coffin. So they got it, and they very delicately put the body in the coffin where it would be there, and the minister would come round and it'd all go off. But they were having an advance wake. The undertaker's men forgot to bring up the 3 trestles to lay the coffin on. True story. So they said to themselves, we don't want to go all the way down those stairs to get the trestles. We'll go and borrow some chairs, 2 or 3 chairs. So they went to the room where the wake had started, and they said, can we please have 3 chairs for the coffin? And the Webster said, certainly. Hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray. After the break. Apart from being artistic director of the Lord Chamberlain's Players Society, you will act in it.
Oh, yes, I guess I'll have to.
Name drop.
Well,
wildly, possibilities.
I've got to admit, of course, that I have no ideas in my mind except gleams in my eye at the moment. But I am sending out a kind of a round-robin letter seeking support, if not active participation, from all kinds of high-priced help, starting with Lord Olivier, his Larryship, as they call him in England, Sir John Gielgud, Sir Ralph Richardson, Sir Michael Redgrave, Sir Johnny Mills, who's an old mate of mine, and a lot of the people whom I've worked with over the years in the States, like Bob Redford and Paul Newman and Dustin Hoffman.
Bob Redford? Robert Redford.
Robert Redford, I beg your pardon. Yes,
I lost the name.
Yeah. And Dustin Hoffman, whom I worked with in New York a number of years ago. And you see, a lot of those guys, at heart, like I am.
Well, you need this job like a hole in the head, don't you?
In fact, I do, because truthfully, seriously for a moment, Jack, I think we all need to believe that what we're doing is worthwhile. And if you die worn out by doing something that you believe to be worthwhile, you're going to have a good end. Far too many people on this planet spend their years on some kind of treadmill to oblivion doing something that they don't believe in.
I wish you wouldn't talk about my job like that.
But you're quite right, of course, in the ordinary career sense.
Yes.
And I had a little exchange with a guy the other day who was a little kind of truculent and began to suspect that I was going to bleed the whole enterprise white. He said, well, how much are you going to get for this then? And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll sell you everything I'm going to get out of this for $100. He said, well, I don't know. I said, well, you give me $50. No. I said, well, you give me $25. He said, will you give me $1? Will you give me $1 for everything I'm going to get out of this? He wouldn't, because by then he realized that...
Yeah. It's a labor of love.
That's right.
I hope it's not love's labor lost.
It might well be. There's a lovely play. Yes. Lovely play. Yeah. We got somebody calling?
You got thousands of them.
Oh,
Go ahead to
lovely.
Barry Moss.
Yes, I just had one question. I was wondering if the popularity of this playhouse increases, will our wait for the ferry also increase from 5 to possibly 10 hours?
Oh, no. God forbid, darling. I would hope that quite the reverse would be true, because in the normal business processes, if you get a larger volume of business, you can reduce your prices a bit. I certainly would hope it wouldn't go up. It might go the other way, but I unfortunately don't control such things. But I'd do my damnedest to see that it kept down. Maybe we might run a hydrofoil. Yes, ma'am. Or sir. Or who? Hello. Good morning.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead to Barry Moss.
Do you think you'll ever be doing Space 1999 again?
No, I think I fell off the back of the moon or something. I'm not like to be heard from again from those parts. No,
it's not still being produced.
No, it's over. It's over now.
But it will be replayed for 1,000 years.
Oh, I'm sure. At least I hope so, because
it will.
Got to keep those residuals
I
coming
saw
in.
it in the French Network the other night.
Don't I speak good French? Yeah. Oh.
No, you're dubbed in that one. You do speak French.
Well, I do, actually. But the funny thing is, if you don't speak a language, like in Japanese, they dub very well. Mm-hmm. So I'm always being accosted, particularly if I'm in New York or in London, by groups of Japanese tourists who will come up to me and say, oh, it's called, that's why. And I say, I'm awfully sorry, I don't speak your language. And then they say, but you speak very well when we see you at home. They don't understand that it's all, they think I'm just being rude.
Victoria, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Morning.
I'd like to ask Mr. Morse on this project on the financial aspect of it. With the Stratford Festival in Ontario being in financial help, how do they expect to make a financial gain of it here in...
Is Stratford in trouble?
Stratford, I'm told, I don't know the exact figures, it's not my affair, of course. Stratford, I'm told, had a bad year last year, and like so many theatrical enterprises occasionally do, did not make the amount of money they expected to. But of course that doesn't affect our project. We are not Stratford West. We have no connection with them. We are ourselves. You in BC, I hope, are going to be justly proud of the fact that you have us 3,000 miles away from the other Shakespeare enterprise, but totally different and totally independent. I can't tell you that we're going to make vast profits, but I can assure you that we are going to give you nothing but the best. All right?
Too early to knock it anyway. You've got to be enthusiastic now.
Well,
another call from Victoria.
Hi.
Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir.
I must say, Mr. Webster, we've enjoyed your program very much and watched it avidly all the way along. The new concept for the Shakespeare Festival, the theater, we think is very, very good. It's sited in a nice place, and the idea of retaining the old maltwood resin, we think is splendid.
Maltwood.
That's good.
One thing I was going to ask about,
yes.
On the mock-up plan, there's no suggestion of parking. I presume they figure on parking across in the shopping mall across the street. If so, they'll have to make a pedestrian
Okay, good question.
We are already in contact with the developers who are taking care of that shopping complex, and as well as parking immediately adjacent, which isn't on that plan because we don't know precisely where it is, there will be more than adequate parking for everybody within the immediate vicinity of the theatre.
Go ahead to Barry Morse.
Hello, Mr. Morris?
Hi, good morning.
Yes, it's. I would like to ask a question or two. I'm a little nervous here. My daughter is an actress.
Yes, ma'am.
She is Canadian-born. In fact, she's born in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
But she lives in dear old downtown Burbank. And she is in. She belongs to ACTRA, and she belongs to SAG, Screen Actors Guild in California.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like I say, she's Canadian-born.
Question?
Hello?
What's your question?
The question is, she's a very good actress, and she sings opera, and she's comedy, classical, everything. And she just don't seem to be getting anywhere.
Why is she not a success, Barry? Why is she not getting starring roles? What is the secret of success once you've made the grade to downtown Burbank?
Darling lady, if I knew all the answer to all of those questions, I assure you I wouldn't be sitting here. But I do...
Yes, all these questions, but my main question is, will you be having young, unknown...
Ah, yes. Will you be developing an acting
Bless your
school?
dear heart. I recognize you very well. I know you and people like you all over the world. You are that very rare and very fond breed of person, a stage mother. And you are rightly proud of your daughter. I cannot tell you if she were to walk into this studio now whether I'd be prepared to give her a job next year, but she's very welcome to get in touch with me, and I'll be very happy to see her.
This is my question. How would she get in touch with you?
Quite simple. Write to the Lord Chamberlain's Players Society.
The Lord Chamberlain Players Society.
Johnson Street, Victoria.
Johnson Street, Victoria. That's the headquarters of our office.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Got in the address and the plug at the
Thank
same
you.
time.
Thank
Last call to Barry Morse. Last call for Barry Morse. Go on.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I'm Barry.
Hi.
Jack, you do a real good job.
Thank you. Oh, that's it.
That's me.
That's you.
And Barry, I was one of those middle-aged people that watched you on Paul Temple.
Oh, God bless you.
Thank you, ma'am. Goodbye
Lovely
and
to hear
God
from
bless
you.
you. Thank you, Barry. Goodbye and God bless you.
God bless you, Jack. Many thanks.
After the break. Well, from the sublime to the God-blimey, what's for tomorrow?
Tomorrow, hopefully, we will have a representative from the Ferry Workers Union.
Oh, yeah, and all the kerfuffle.
And also from the Maternal Health Society, we have 2 midwives.
2 what?
Midwives.
2 midwives?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was going out with the Middle Ages.
Well, they're trying to bring it back.
Well, we'll see. My thanks to Barry Morse and the Lord Chamberlain's Players Society tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. precisely.